Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Commentary as Magic's stream on tonight, Sunday, July 8th, 2018. I am, as always, Grandpaws.
I'm Emperor Bugle.
Big Cheese.
And shockingly, my name is Arcat, not the usual rambling.
Bugle, good to have you back.
Hi, I exist again.
You do. Did you cease existing? Did Thanos get to you? Spoilers.
I mean, I'm pretty sure that when something is outside of your field of view, or in this case, audio range, they just don't exist.
No, you see, what happened here is the Bugle we know and love was actually a token copy of the real Bugle, and he got frightened.
Oh. So he ceased to exist.
Exactly.
And then another token copy was made.
Okay, gotcha. Is the original one still sitting there frightened? Because Bugle's probably unique.
Well, we can't have that because then it would have been dismissed due to uniqueness.
Yes, because they would still have the same name, and one of them is unique.
Right, I was more implying that the current Bugle and all previous incarnations were changelings.
No. I said token copy, I didn't say our queen, who was best queen.
Okay, that's
But
fair.
more about her later.
Yeah, tonight's going to be a fun look back through time. One question that I hear...
From the beginning.
From the very beginning. One question I hear asked quite a bit from new players, from people who have been around for some period of time but maybe had some gaps in their playtime in relation to the game's lifespan, is what deck for this color is the best? And that's a tricky question, because it really depends on the meta that you play it in. The deck that may be best for yellow right now might be very different than the best deck for yellow ever. But that's exactly what we're here to look at.
It is very different.
It is indeed quite different.
Although you're going to claim I'm wrong, but...
No, I'm not.
Yeah, you are.
Well, we'll see. Tonight we're going to be looking at each color's peak performance in a competitive deck where that color not only occupied the majority of the card slots within the deck itself, but also was that main's color as well. So, for example, even though there have been decks that have splashed colors to support them, if it wasn't...
Photo finish.
Right, photo finish.
F-stop.
If it was not one of the primary colors of cards in your deck, and if the main was also not in that color, we're excluding that from this list. As a disclaimer, we're also referencing these decks' performances based on national or tournament metas. Things like continental championships, regionals, other major cons like BabsCon, Everfree, things like that. So your results may vary based on what your local meta was, but this is the best data that we can get across the last 4 years or so of the game's existence and competitive play.
That's a long time.
It has been a little while, and some of us have been here for almost that full duration.
Oh, this means I get to do a back in my day thing later.
Yes, you can be a hipster later. It will be fine.
No, I didn't say hipster, I said back in my day.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, those are very different. Back in my day, hipsters and old men were different.
I mean, they dress basically the same.
Bugle just stole all of my thunder.
Anyway, without further ado, let's take a look. We'll go right down the color list. We'll get a brief description of what each deck is trying to do, and then we'll talk about why it worked so well at that point in time. So, Aura, go ahead and take it away.
Okay, first up, we've talked about this at length before, but this is Hot Wings. Specifically, this is Balloona Hot Wings. But the short story is, it's blue, it likes reducing cost, it likes disrupting confronts, it likes confronting problems, and generally it just goes fast.
So in this case, we're talking about blue, yeah?
Blue and pink.
Okay.
But blue, yes. It's blue. It goes fast. I'm not real sure what else to say about that.
Fair enough. I mean, we have done a lot of spotlights on Hot Wings.
It's come up once or twice.
So let's talk about the meta where this came about. This was just after the release of DOE, Defenders of Equestria, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and it remained being a thing. You can still claim it's a thing. I think it's still a good deck.
Mm-hmm.
I think aside from mod farming year 2, this is the one deck that we've had the largest representation of in a top 16.
Because there were a lot of people playing this. Yes, it's just a very easy to play aggro deck. Very straightforward, very effective.
Yep. It was easy for people to understand what the deck was trying to do, and for the most part, excluding the Night Gliders, which thankfully had been there as promos, and the Bluna, the deck didn't actually need that many cards that were difficult to find. Most things were at common or uncommon, and the few basic rares were easy enough to trade for.
Mm-hmm.
Now, up until
getting the Angel Wings was kind of a bit of a rush.
that card did kind of fly. Gabby was also hard at the very beginning.
Yeah.
Yep. Well,
So, up
I think
until that
that's-
point, sorry, go ahead.
No, go for it.
I was going to say, up until this point, we had mostly seen Bluna as a monocolor main. There had been a bit of a splash with her getting into pink before, and I think at one point into purple. But I think the presence of some better pink entry and just some better pink support at low rec really helped her.
We've seen multiple blue-purple decks, yeah. Though blue-pink was the top-placing aggro deck, the Continentals, before this.
Yeah, but I think that was using Scootaloo.
No, it was Bluna.
No.
I remember it was my second last opponent. But yes, most people stuck to mono Bluna for sure.
Yep. So, speaking of stealing my thunder earlier, Bugle, I think you've got something to say about some thunder-related things.
Yeah. So, long time ago, also in Marks and Time, a little blue card showed up, and by little I mean gigantic, Thunder Lane. And he, by himself, established the mono blue farming deck, One Punch Mare. One Punch Mare is a very simple deck. You try to beat up every villain you can, or every epic you can in the case of Nightmare Star, and score points fast.
And just in case you don't have any of those, you can Thunderlane your opponent to death.
Yeah, that too. Surprisingly, TFOing every turn is good for 0 AT.
I'm shocked and appalled that that would be a thing.
Many players have scored, beat up a Troublemaker and DFO'd and got 5 bonus points. That's a lot of points in one turn.
That is an excessive number of points. But again, blue, going fast, doing stuff.
Now, at this point in the meta, what else were we seeing, and why did this deck have that stint of great success?
Well, kind of like Hot Wings, I think this was just very easy to play.
It was pretty easy. It had a decent enough matchup against one of the best control decks at the time, which we'll get to later. And not a lot of people were playing pink, aside from Hot Wings, of course. Oh no, this was Marks and Time.
This was before Hot Wings.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
This
was
weren't
Tantabee
playing
Sarah.
a lot of pink at this time, and because of that, Thunderlane could just go unanswered, which is not what you want to do if you are staring down a Thunderlane.
Yep, this predated Drinking Duo and Belly Flop, I believe, so...
Yep.
Food fight was your option, basically.
Yeah, it also just typically outsped the traditional farming decks.
Yeah, this had the advantage of being able to confront most of its problems,
Yeah.
whereas AJ usually didn't. Yep. And it's still a fun deck now. Ambassador of Loyalty getting that free movement every turn is pretty nice.
Yeah, this deck is a lot more resistant to the major weakness of orange farming, which was, of course, forced movement. And yeah, I don't know that there's terribly much more to say. Aside from get those Firewind ready points.
No, it's more like pack your pumpkins. Anyway, speaking of farming...
Well, we knew it would be coming to this eventually, didn't we?
Should I buy some apples?
That's a different deck.
You should buy all the apples.
I think you can buy all the apples with this one, because it's AJ Farm as one of the top orange decks of all time. Show of hands, who saw this coming?
I don't see any hands.
Hooves.
I still don't see
What?
any hooves. Unfortunately, your crickets are not going right now, or that would be a great background to this. Just
Yes.
who is surprised? Crickets.
It's too bright outside. Anyway,
Eh.
AJ had always been a dominant force for farming since she had come out with the right epics. Whereas Mod required running different types of cards in your deck in order to get her up to proper power, and even then had a ceiling, AJ was effectively limitless. Run some extra flips, get some soft control in the form of exhaustion, lose some abilities, and throw in a stick for good measure to get AJ flipped through yet another method. And you've got a deck that is currently continuing to dominate both core and harmony metas.
Buy some apples, y'all.
So, Farm has been around for a long time, and AJ took, it seems to me like she took a little while to be picked up and didn't like spring right off the bat in EO. Am I misremembering that?
That wasn't true in my meta, but I don't know about every meta. Most people I know change immediately.
Okay.
It might have taken a little bit.
There was definitely some debate initially, but I think by the time High Magic came, I know of literally only one person who was still using Mod.
That's fair. I think we can really look at this deck and point to its biggest power spike being in Sequestria and beyond. With a lot of people going towards playing core over harmony, it was surprising to find that some of the newer troublemakers actually worked out very well. For example, Storm King, which is not in this list, gives great protection against force movement when everyone thought he'd actually be terrible.
This is, of course, the harmony list.
Right. But in conjunction with Storm King, we also got two other great cards that obviously do see play in this deck, Staff of Sikonis and Desert Road. Being able to shut off opposing ETB abilities means you can't be Ursa Vanquishered anymore, unless your opponent manages to get rid of the Desert Road.
To be fair, that is not an ETB ability, but yes.
You can't be Ursa Vanquishered on that same turn.
Yeah.
So you've
She might as well be ATB. Except for when you had Plum Tuckered out.
Yeah. I mean, you've got Bailout still.
Yeah.
Bailout.
And then Staff, obviously, just helped AJ get even stupider in terms of the amount of power she could get. I was also skeptical about the social obligations, as previously we had seen Rock Slide, but man, that card just accelerates you so fast.
Yeah, absolutely. One of my locals has preferred it for a long time. He just runs more extra flip cards in his main deck.
Yeah. I think the thing we can point to AJ's success is the fact that there are so few ways to actually interact with her on her boosted side in a meaningful manner.
Yeah, there's just no way to get rid
Basically
of those
none that are
counters.
effective.
And one of the best answers is Bailout, which is in her own colors.
And surprise, surprise, one of the best uses for AJ is farming.
Yeah.
So, yep, it's kind of cyclical. There's also the fact that in this meta, which we've talked about before, of very, very heavy, very, very prevalent removal, AJ doesn't really rely on too many of her friends, and so it's not too crucial for her to have to worry about protecting them.
You don't need to worry about hard parties when you have no friends.
Yep. Let's wrap up the farming here with one more list.
So it turns out that Maud is technically an apple family member, and it's apples all the way down. Maud is, of course, good at getting big and going after troublemakers while disrupting the opponent with the usual tools, although this one is an older build that still has some more of the fun tricks from back in its day. Basically, the moment from Maud's release in Rock and Rave through about the end of Absolute Discord, maybe a little bit into Equestrian Odysseys. But a lot of the tools of the day are in here. You've got Pile of Presents to keep your opponent from drawing for answers, Boulder to both act as a resource and friend to get Maud flipped very early, and just a bunch of other good stuff. As with before, she likes beating up troublemakers, and no one is surprised that she's very good at this. With the 7 peak power and multiple flips and etc., etc.
Now, I think Maud really came out as, especially in AD, as one of the first monocolor decks that we were seeing.
Yep.
It didn't care so much to confront its own problems, which is...
But still could.
But it could, yeah.
Yeah, the introduction of the Colorless Friends was kind of a game changer.
Although that was a later development in Absolute Discord.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, Maud was kind of the terror of Gen Con for several years in a row.
2 of them.
Yeah, 14 and 15.
Well, there were only 2 mod decks the first year, but obviously they did well since they both top 16.
And then one of them won, in fact.
Yeah, one of them won. Well, yeah.
Yeah, Maud had kind of a similar issue to AJ in that there weren't a lot of ways to interact with the discard pile, and that's where her power was kept. So in the same way that AJ had her power counters, Maud had her power modifiers.
Yeah.
Now, she wasn't necessarily as resilient as AJ in terms of just a single character will be enough, because sometimes these troublemakers are pretty big, and you don't know what the opponent's going to be running. That's why she had a lot of these control tools and some extra flips that were present through AJ's, I'm sorry, not AJ's Epiphany, cargo loader. But she had a decent control shell as well, and it wasn't the only time we saw Maud run control.
Nope. But we're not talking about that deck today.
No, we're not.
Oh.
Ara, do you want to give an honorary shout out here?
I'm going to give an honorary shout out here because Dragon Express and wait, hold on. This was all about putting counters on your main, which is all Orange does. Oh my god, Okay. So it turns out that
it's pronounced Wargarble.
Wargarble? Yes, it is in fact pronounced Wargarble. I'm going to go bite the sprinkler now. Cheese, why don't you tell us about what pink does?
Pink. It likes to get rid of all your friends. Although that's not what this first deck does. So our first is Mono Pink Pile, which was a thing for a long time, actually. I mean, originally was possible in CG, but really came into its own in AD with Chrysalis, and then got even worse later through Absolute Discord. And it's a combo deck that used Everybody Shuffling, which shuffles both players' hands of their deck, and then they draw cards, and Pile of Presents, which is when your opponent draws cards in their main phase, you get points. And a lot of decks had to respond to this, and originally there weren't that many tools, but people got more tools, and but it was very interesting to see how the meta kind of adapted to this deck.
This is particularly notable because this was relevant through middle of High Magic, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, was that BronyCon 2016?
So we're talking just over a week
Before Gen Con?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so, and one of the major things that made this deck work was it takes a lot of AT, and you got that AT from the Penny Hooves combo, and Penny got banned. So, Pile doesn't work that well anymore.
I mean, the win condition still works. The setup is much more complicated.
Yes.
It is a very AT-intensive win condition.
The Penny Hooves combo, since we should go into that, is Dr. Hooves Unblinking is a 5-cost friend who, when he enters the discard pile for any reason, will let you find a copy of Dr. Hooves. And in this case, we want another copy of Unblinking so that he can find more Unblinkings later. Penny Lane, meanwhile, has when she enters play, you may retire a friend. If you do, gain AT equal to its cost. And as mentioned, Unblinking has 5 cost. Even if it is frightened, it still has 5 cost. So Penny Lane costs -2 AT.
Seems good.
Yeah.
Very good.
Combine this with Juggling Routine, and you can cycle through kind of a stupid number of times.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were dream turns where you would get like 4 cycles through.
Yeah.
This was also one of the first decks that really encouraged people to be running resource removal. Resources showed up in a variety of others, mod as well, of course. But if you didn't have an answer for Pile of Presence, you were in dire straits.
Yeah, wasn't a study session around during this era?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Same set, actually, Crystal Games.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Thankfully, the same set also gave us
Seabreeze's Flower, which this is running.
The one of the biggest losses in core, if you ask me.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't
Next
like
deck?
having the splash purple. Yeah. Next deck.
Hogwash.
So next deck was recently, since Sequestria, it's been Burb, otherwise known as BRB. And this is a Skystar, or not orange, sorry, purple control deck, which basically is, the whole point is to keep your opponent's friends from ever being impactful, to either dismiss them or send them home, or like bounce them home, or bounce them to the top of deck or wherever. Just anywhere except for the play area problems.
We can't
And
have
this-
players getting entry. We can't have them confronting problems.
Exactly.
This is
No
very
friends.
good at making sure that they don't do either of those things.
Yeah. If the opponent is doing something, you've done something wrong.
Yeah. Also did a pretty good job of keeping AJ away from troublemakers.
Yes. So the key here with Burb is that almost all of the impactful friends in this deck have on enters play effects, and there are a lot of ways in this deck to cause things to temporarily leave and then re-enter play.
I think it's like 11 or 12 or something.
Yeah, it looks like 11 in this list.
And Selena Blue is a kind of critical part of this deck, both allowing you to draw cards, because you need to draw a lot of cards in this deck, and it allows you to set Discord Wrathful or Moondancer on top of your deck, or even just like a staff to get a high flip, to both prevent the opponent either from farming or just to get another effect off of a bounce.
This is also kind of an indicator of the power level of Pink and the spike that it took moving from Marks in Time to DOE. If you'll look, the only Pink event that's in here is Belly Flop.
Yep.
But to be fair, if you're going to run a single pink event, that one's pretty far up there.
Oh yeah. This was also interesting because despite the fact that this deck functions almost entirely on friends entering play and leaving play and re-entering play, the wide majority of the cards that make this work came out in the same set as this deck's biggest counter, which is Desert Road.
Yeah, Desert Road hurts. That's why there's quite a bit of resource removal. There's only 4 in this list.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And we've seen some go more than 4.
I think we saw a version of this deck that had like 6 or 8 or something resource removal.
Mm-hmm.
Hithroc's version had 7, yeah.
Yeah.
This deck has a tendency to do very well against any kind of board state that does not go wide. It's also one of the best matchups for AJ farming, assuming that you can get around any desert roads that are there, because there's a lot of repeatable forced movement at immediate speed and problem replacement that AJ just doesn't necessarily have the resources to outlast.
Yeah, and the main weakness of this deck, one of the major problems you run into is since you don't have infinite repeat, because this is a core deck, so we don't have f-stop, is you can eventually run out of steam.
Especially if they're attacking your hand.
Yeah.
Yep. That's why the problem deck is actually relatively easy to confront, despite this playing far more like a control deck, because Skystar still needs to be scoring points while she's stopping you from doing so.
Yeah, you actually do play this deck a little bit like an aggro deck at times, trying to abuse Moon Dancer. The Moon Dancer Selena Blue combo.
Yep. All right, well, that about covers pink. Shall we move to the other half of this list and talk about that color?
We are moving to the middle of this list, in fact.
The next P word.
Yes,
Ponies?
the other P color.
Princess Cadence?
No, let's talk about some C
Poppy?
words instead.
Who said Poppy?
Oh, no. I know what P word we're talking about. There's only one P word on my mind, and it's pace. 1 pace, to be precise.
Slow pace.
1 pace is fairly infamous as the first competitive combo deck in Ponies. Though some of you might go, wait, isn't that a pink deck? Yes, the final version of it was pink, but originally it used purple names.
And this is the form in which it was originally announced, and the form in which it took the community by storm.
Yes, it literally defined the competitive meta. It was actually the first competitive deck posted after Carolot Knights came out, and the reaction to that was pretty big. Almost every deck, including one that we're going to get to later, that came after that in the CN meta, was a direct counter to 1 pace. Because if you could not handle 1 pace, you were going to lose. So now, what did 1 pace do? Well, despite what it's named after, it actually is a Globetrotter deck. You use Globetrotter and your 9 showdowns to just try and draw through your deck and eventually loop through your deck several times and win the game off of fashion weeks.
This represented a serious turning point in the competitive meta because prior to this, you didn't really have a good time limit. Once this came out, if you couldn't disrupt this, you had about 6 turns to win the game. And if you couldn't do it
Sometimes
that fast...
not even that.
Yeah, if you couldn't do it that fast, you just lost to this.
Yeah, the fastest deck in the Premier meta was the aggro deck Rainbow Dash Wins, and this outsped that the vast majority of the time.
Which is saying quite a bit.
When you are faster than Rainbow Dash, the fastest pony in Equestria, something's wrong.
Now, of course, Rainbow Dash ended up having to adapt to deal with this. And speaking of time limits, this was a combo deck that was by no means guaranteed to fire.
No.
This was tricky, it had high variance, and many competitive players who were running this list had to sit there and practice with it over and over and over and over to ensure that they could do it fast enough. An average turn could take 19 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was, and you really had to work to get it down. No, that's not every turn was 19 minutes.
No.
The winning turn.
The important turn. But you had to move. Of course, nowadays games are 5 minutes longer, so that definitely would have helped. But it was interesting to see this archetype emerge so early.
Actually, at the time, there was no hard time limit. So you could just go on forever.
There was no hard time limit, but judges didn't necessarily rule that way all the time.
There was only one, at least at Gen Con, there was only one match that was force-ended. But yes, that's not what we should dwell on. We should dwell on what this deck actually does.
Yeah. There were a number of purple cards here that really ended up showing their value. Of course, all the AT generation, Gyro is very strong, Magic Duel, but Element of Magic was one of the big offenders. And it actually took another couple of sets for her to get the boot.
Yeah, the first ban was against Globetrotter, but Globetrotter wasn't really the problem.
Well, no, Twilight Frame Globetrotter. Then she did it again next year.
Yeah.
And then they finally got the culprit.
Then they finally got her.
Yeah. But yeah, this was a big deal back in the day.
Talk to us more about purple, Mr. Bugle.
Okay, a completely different take on purple, and one that far more people are familiar with is, of course, control. And what says purple control more than throwing puppies at everything?
Is that a rhetorical question?
I don't think that's a rhetorical question. Puppies are the only thing that scares Nightmare Moon.
So, Zipper Wheel control, what focuses around the namesake Zipper Wheel, which just tries to move all of your opponent's characters home all the time, always. Zipper Wheel's partner in crime is F-Stop, a card that we have talked about a lot. Probably needs no introduction. But in case he does, what he does is he recurs events from your discard pile for the low cost of 1 AD every single turn. This was the first widespread F-Stop deck, I think. While F-Stop had shown up a few times before, this was the deck that made people go, F-Stop is scary.
But
Go ahead.
But what this really wants to do is it wants to set up a troublemaker wall, and then it wants to put Zippo at a problem. Preferably with Photo Finish and some other friends, but make sure that you're confronting. And then every time the opponent tries to do basically anything, you use one of the myriad of ways that this has to generate a critter token with Zippo.
At immediate speed.
At immediate speed, even. And then something of the opponent's gets moved home.
Yeah.
You want to confront that problem? Nope, move something home. You want to challenge that troublemaker? It's a darn shame that there's nothing there.
Yeah, if you can get set up enough, you don't even need to play troublemakers, because it doesn't matter. The opponents never have characters at problems when it matters.
It's interesting looking back on this now. This is kind of like the beta version of what Burb is doing.
Just friendlier.
You've got a lot of soft removal. Burb obviously has more hard removal, but the idea is basically still the same. Try to stop the opponent from doing anything relevant, and forced movement or friend control is a lot of the game plan.
Yep.
I like seeing Royal Guidance in here.
Yeah.
It's not the last time we'll see that card.
It's not, actually.
No, it is not.
I think Zephyr Will also has the honor of being the first widespread non-combo deck to use 3 or more colors.
Probably. Well, there was the blue, pink, white aggro.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, Cosmic Bowling.
There was Dream Quest.
Wait, was that?
And Cosmic Bowling as well. Although that was really just running Cloud Chaser and Dr. Hooves.
Yeah. And no one counts that. Because
it turns out you can do that better with Pile. So
yeah. There you go.
Well, I was just not counting it because Hooves is just going into play for free and Cloud Chaser has no rec.
This was also one of the, not only was it a great example of how to use f-stop, but it was kind of one of the first forays into the toolbox style of control. You'll notice a lot of events here not at 3 of. That's because...
You will notice 0 events at 3 of.
Fair. It's primarily because there was a lot going on in the meta at this time, and you didn't necessarily know what you'd be up against, so might as well pack for everything.
Yep. F-stop can get it back. And your Gyro or your Meticulous can help you find what you need.
Mm-hmm.
Almost nothing is a 3 of in this deck.
Well, the stuff that is 3 of is pretty important.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that should say a little something about the relative priorities of finding and playing those particular cards.
But yeah, that's Dipperwill. It was pretty big in High Magic and Marks in Time. And then other toolbox control decks pushed it out of the meta.
Yep.
Grandpa's, talk to us about a different flavor of control.
Sure. As the saying goes, there's only 2 things that are certain in life.
Ponies?
Pink and taxes.
Pink and taxes. I was going to go with farm, but sure.
Well, pink got its death cards later on. Sorry, sleeping cards. Or flops.
Parties.
Parties, sure. But we had the latter of that phrase from the very beginning. This was taxes. And it was, I think, unquestionably White's strongest display as a primary color in any competitive deck. In the Premier era, no less. Before we even got to Canterlot Knights. The idea was very simple. If my opponent has to keep moving characters, and I make it more expensive, I'm going to get more value than my opponent is. And so that's what this deck does. It forcibly moves your opponent's characters, it sends their movement, or it sends them back to where they were when they are moved, and it makes everything very, very expensive. Octavia gives an extra tax of 2 AT, moving a character to or from that problem. That also means that she could shut down opponents playing Rarity Truly Outrageous to that problem, because Rarity RTO was one of the key cards back in that day. Gain a little bit of AT through All-Team Organizer and Spring Forward. Get some cost reduction through Cloud Chaser so you can play Ursa Vanquisher over and over again, and hide behind a Troublemaker wall and farm at one problem with RTO for a couple turns, and there's the game.
Yep. It is worth mentioning, since people nowadays are familiar with the current Confront rules, this was back in the old Confront rules, so you could actually flip your rarities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You would score the bonus points upon initial confronts, which means when you got to your problem the first time, you'd get 2 points, which would be enough to flip Dazzling Fashionista over.
So if I recall, and correct me if I'm wrong, but back in Premier, there were 2 cards that dismissed friends. There was Downright Dangerous, and there was Pinky Responsibility Pie.
Yeah.
Nope, there was also Here's Your Invitation.
For everything with 0 power.
No, 1.
1 power?
1 or less.
Okay, so you could get rid of Cloud Chaser, you could get rid of Zecora.
Yeah.
There were
Spike Baby Dragon.
No, you never needed to get rid of that. No one ever ran that. No one's ever going to run that.
I know.
But yes, there was not a lot of dismissal back in the day.
So
there was no friend banishment. Even.
Yeah.
No,
So Control looked very different.
Not on the list?
That was
Not on the
Canterlot
list,
Knights.
Canterlot Knights, yeah.
Oh, wow.
This is Premier only.
Yeah. Once something hit the field, there was not a whole lot you could do about it, broadly speaking.
We had only 1 Troublemaker Buster. That was Premier.
Yeah, it was rough. The dream here was clearly sit behind a yellow Parasprite at one problem with a Nightmare Moon at the other.
Yeah.
Watch your opponent's hand get destroyed as you sit there with an RTO and confront turn after turn after turn. And it didn't take that long. All-Team Organizer is an inefficient use of gaining AT that takes 3 turns to pay for itself, and isn't even power efficient when it enters play, and it still saw play.
But this deck does not care, because it absolutely wants to run a 20 or 30 like a 20-turn game. It is fine with that.
Yeah, Cloud Chaser, normally not seen in control decks, but back here, absolutely, because it was AT.
Yep.
I think in Premiere, every deck ran Cloud Chaser
Just
if it
about
could.
every deck, yeah. Big Bombs was the only one that didn't, I believe.
It is worth pointing out that there were a couple different versions of taxes, but this is the one we're highlighting. It was also one of the single most expensive decks to run back in Premiere, running a staggering 13 ultra rares.
And Cloud Chasers back when they were
$15 a piece.
Like $20.
Yeah. Yeah. This is
And Back Where You Begin was expensive. Stand Still was
Yeah.
expensive.
Aoizotl. Yeah.
Decks nowadays don't even run 13 ultra rares.
Nope. This was
Ultra opulent.
This was indeed Big Pimpin' Taxes. And naturally, you had to use the rarity sleeves from Ultra Pro as well. Because of course you did.
Because back then we thought those sleeves were amazing and they didn't always fall apart.
Oh no, we knew.
Because we didn't know that until a few months later.
No,
Yeah.
you knew that within 5 minutes of picking those sleeves up,
You just didn't care.
basically.
All right. Well, that may have been White's peak. What else has White been able to accomplish since then, Aura?
It turns out that there was another white main in Equestrian Odysseys, Octavia. We've talked about her before, but it turns out that when you take her and put a bunch of really cheap blue stuff and good blue movement and cost reduction, because why not? You can hit way above your apparent weight because the little number up in the corner goes up by like 2. In some cases, a little bit more. And this punches way above its weight. It's also in the 2 colors that have basically all the point acceleration, and just for giggles, let's throw an Arqueen in there. And so this is fairly obvious. This is a just bleeding edge aggro deck that just wants to go really, really, really fast.
All the fast.
Yeah, this deck, if you count Chrysalis as a Night Glider or an RTO, this deck has 15 cards so that you score 1 or more additional points.
And this was in
Yeah,
the early Equestrian Odysseys meta, as is usual when a new set releases, aggro runs rampant because look at all these cool new cards. And this was back in the day when you got first confront bonuses, so
Yeah.
look at all of those 2s up in the problem list. Aren't
Why
those
can't
great?
I hold all these points?
And this deck was great until you ran into a Troublemaker wall.
Which
You were
happened.
a little sad.
Because this was also the era of Bulk Portal.
Yep.
Yeah.
We saw troublemakers like Arimosby starting to appear with great frequency. Troublemakers got a lot better in Equestrian Odysseys. You started seeing higher power, lower bonuses, and
Like
more
zero
debilitating
bonus.
abilities. Yeah.
We saw some zeros in Absolute Discord, but not many were great. Spike was the best one, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, it's also when we had the fake Troublemaker. AJ.
This is the best Troublemaker in the game.
So dumb.
I
Right.
love that Troublemaker.
EO and High Magic were pretty close together, so the meta has a tendency to blur. But right out of the gate, this was definitely something that was frequently talked about and run at least at local levels.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I believe. Yeah. We saw this in regionals.
Yes. This or some variant of it often appeared merely because something like this is fairly obvious. There is an aggro deck here, it wants to be built, it goes fast. It's surprisingly not as easy to play as you might think because you normally need to plan a little bit ahead to make sure that there's something to receive Octavia's power bonus.
Yeah, if you could not DFO, you did not do anything that turn, basically.
Yeah.
Well, if you could confront a new problem, you still did that back in that day.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
All right, moving away from white.
Well, kind
Are we
of.
on to yellow?
We're going to move sideways from white.
To
Because the
yellow
man,
white.
because the man in the back said everyone attack.
The man in the back did in fact say everyone attack.
And it turned into?
A Ballroom Blitz.
Go for it, Cheese.
So Ballroom Blitz came out of the CN meta as a response to One Pace, because the meta One Pace was developed in games were pretty long, and it did take quite a while to win. And so Ballroom Blitz did beat the original One Pace in speed. This was often 5 turns, and it also had enough tools to tempo tools to interrupt the opponents, the other kind of aggro decks that were out at the time, which didn't have any interruption tools. And really, it's just stand still, and I think that's
Flutter
it.
guy.
Oh yeah, of course, the Rain Flutter Guy. Yeah, stand still and Flutter Guy. Like, it's only 2 cards, but it was enough to just eke out the win there.
Although there was a very neat trick that later versions of this ran. They would include 3 copies of Changeling Infiltrator. They did it again.
Yes,
deal
did.
with it. And because this was in the era of first to confront and let's just DFO because we can, what it would do is it would drop the Changeling Infiltrator and just retire one of its friends. And the fact that the Changeling Infiltrator would shuffle your discard pile into your deck is completely irrelevant, because what it did was it blocked off a problem at what in the day would have been considered immediate speed. It's a face-up troublemaker on your turn.
Yeah.
And your opponent now cannot start a DFO.
Yeah, I think the general play would be like, if you can't DFO, you would single confront and put that down.
Yeah. I just want to point out that this deck is really interesting because of its entry into white. Like, it's running featherweight because it had to, because back then we didn't have 3/2/02s.
Yeah, the 1 cost wouldn't be enough. You need to hit your standstill, you need to hit your RTO. Those are the only 2 cards you need to hit, but...
The other major thing about this deck was the problem deck. And it is designed so that any 2 cards can confront it.
Well,
or like any 2 of the right colors, but yes.
Yes, you need
your main and a white card.
With the singular exception of
Free Owl.
Or what is that thing? I forget what the proper title of that thing even is.
May the best
bet
win.
But it finds you an owl, which boosts everything by 1, so you're still fine.
Yeah.
Hence why it's called Free Owl. Not that it makes the owl free, but whatever.
I think of all the decks we've highlighted so far, this one most stayed true to its primary color, apart from like AJ or Mod, of course, in that there is a ton of yellow in this deck.
Yes. As you said, the only white cards with Wreck are RTO and Standstill. Literally it. You still needed the white friends to confront, because we didn't have single color problems back then, but you didn't need a lot of white, just enough.
Well, I mean, that's fine, because the capstone white card here in this otherwise yellow deck is the capstone white card.
I think there's another trick we want to point out here, because this is not the only time. It's not the only time this card has been used in this way. Staring Contest was very interesting because you wanted to lose that face-off.
Yep.
It was 2 AT to move a character to a problem, and unless you had Falcon in play, that wasn't getting any cheaper. However, Staring Contest, if you lost, would bounce the friend back to your hand, and since most of your important critters that would let you move your main for 1 AT if she was boosted only cost 1 to play, and Cloud Chaser could reduce that even further, Staring Contest actually became 0 AT, move a friend, through some complicated means.
And you dodged taxes.
Yes, you did.
And worst case scenario, you got rid of something on the opponent's side.
Right, yeah, if you accidentally won.
Somehow.
By flipping one of your few 5s.
Yeah, and there were a lot fewer enters play abilities back at this time. So it wasn't much of a problem. Like today, it feels like like you're playing Burb, and it feels like every single card the opponent plays has an enters play effect.
Yeah.
Yeah, this and Pegasus Explosion, a deck that we're not talking about today, were 2 of the main reasons why taxes ended up kind of fizzling out. Yeah, right around this time. There was just too much cheap movement that wasn't affected by that.
Well, it wasn't even cheap movement. It's, oh, you're going to tax movement? Whatever. I'll just play stuff.
I mean, Pegasus Explosion had a
Fluttershy
lot of
is
conga
cheap
lining.
movement.
Fluttershy is cheap movement, that's true. But the
All
decks did things that were not main phase move actions.
Yes.
They go fast.
On to our next deck.
Yep. Honorable mention for yellow here, coming out just a little bit earlier, back in Premiere once again. Remember that card we said we'd talk about later?
We're talking about it?
We're talking about it. Well, indirectly,
Rainbows.
yes. Yay! I thought it was Smiles.
Was
What?
Smiles.
Oh, it was Smiles.
It was actually Royal Guidance.
Yeah, the Premiere era fixers that allowed you to get 2 power on your characters enabled some pretty stupid plays. There was no play that was as stupid as a turn 2 Guidance Counselor.
Yeah.
A Fluttershy
Nope.
Guidance Counselor. The card that still strikes terror into the hearts of players to this day.
Meh.
I don't know what you're mad
Meh.
about.
I mean, it strikes terror into me in, like, Nightmare.
Are you saying that if this card was not banned, that the meta would be fine and there would be no problems?
I'm saying if this card was not banned and we didn't have access to the fixers, that I'd be less scared about it. There's still the Nurse Redheart, but eh. Anyway, Royal Guidance was interesting in that it was a combination sort of an aggro and a control deck, and it could really flip back and forth. And farm, yeah. It could really flip back and forth depending on how the situation presented itself. Against opposing aggro decks, you could definitely sit there and just set up a Troublemaker wall, because turns out Yellow Parasprite and Nightmare Moon disrupting hands is good no matter what colors you're in.
9 sets later, Yellow Parasprite still wins games.
And still does win games. And Royal Guidance into Guidance Counselor early was stupid.
Turn 2.
Yes.
There were times you could actually get to a full lock with Guidance Counselor if you were playing in a game that didn't have a time limit, where you'd get 2 of them on the field before your opponent could actually play most of their impactful friends. And then you would sit there and do nothing, drawing a card every turn, until your opponent had drawn through their entire deck and Nightmare Moon and Yellow Parasprite were eating it. And then when they had no cards in deck and no cards in hand, then you'd start confronting.
Yeah.
Seems
or
bad.
if you did have a time limit, you play the third one, confront once, and then do nothing.
Sure, because now you're ahead in points.
Yeah.
So it's fine. You'll notice a couple cards here coming in from other decks. Cloud Chaser saw play in basically everything back in Premiere because she was that good. All-Team Organizer, again, AT Generation, very good for control decks. Critter Cavalry, kind of interesting here, being able to be used either aggro or protecting a Troublemaker.
Yep.
We do see some resource removal with Beaverton Beaver Teeth. Ursa Vanquisher is, of course, back. And then you've got some nice movement that's present here. You've got the Free Owl again, you've got This Way Little Ones, you've got Falcon. And for even more AT value, if you really just need to save up for an Ursa Vanquisher or something along those lines, you've got I Need Answers. Dismiss your critters.
Yeah. Though you did forget the most important movement, Fluttershy, Beastmaster.
Ah, yes. At the start of a face-off. Problem face-off?
A face-off involving this card.
That's right. Face-off
which is
involving this
why
card.
she could farm.
You may move one of your critter friends to this card's problem.
Yeah.
So, hey, I'm going to challenge my Aoizodal. I'm going to move my Falcon up there. Who's going to move my Beaver? Seems good. Now I've got Caretaker plus another 4 power, so 8 power versus 5. And I can potentially add another 5 on flip.
Seems okay.
Yeah. Point acceleration in yellow-purple.
Could involve 3 Falcons and then a Forest Owl at the end of it.
Oh, are we in Magical Christmas Land?
Yes, we are in Magical Christmas
Land.
Do you remember when Falcon got to like
so
$30 or something?
Yeah.
I do think one thing we should bring up here is this deck is very light on purple entry.
Yeah, it only
But-
has the 3 Blue Moons and the 3 Royal Guidance. The good news is it didn't really matter what your rec was, because as long as you got a Royal Guidance in hand, that would be enough to get any one of these friends on the board.
Yeah. And you might go, but wait, aren't you using the Royal Guidances to play Guidance Counselor? Why, yes, you are doing that as well. That stalls the opponent so effectively, you can just afford to draw one of your other entry.
Yep.
Yep.
It is.
Blue Moon was kind of terrible entry here because like it gets you into Twilight and that's it.
ATO was important though.
This is back in Premiere. He was basically it.
I know, like, yeah, your only other option,
Bright Bulb.
was
Bright Bulb and Lady Justice.
Lady Justice. That's what I was thinking of.
Which
4
Texas
for
was running
3.
all 3 of those.
Yep. Now it's important to note that Blue Moon was enough to confront Parasprite Pandemic.
Yeah.
That card was actually really aggressively costed for confront requirements for Premiere.
Mm-hmm.
2, 2, and 6.
2 bonus while you're at it.
Yep. And finds you a troublemaker when it enters play.
Yeah. Finds you a yellow
Yeah, where are
Parasprite.
all my 2/2 confront recs with 2 bonus and core? I miss them.
You'll
Enter-
never get them.
can't
Interplay,
has.
please.
You
Interplay,
can't
please.
has.
Can has?
Can't has.
Aggro once.
But you can't has.
Anyway, that's 2 decks for every color. So we're done, right?
No, we're not done. Dragon Express is yellow. This is my
Dragon
hill. I will
Expre-
die on it.
Dragon Express is not yellow.
Dragon
It's
Express
orange.
is yellow.
It's not orange either.
The card that made it work.
It's rainbow.
I mean, considering the conditions we're going off by this stream, it is orange.
Technically.
Okay, fine.
No, because it's not including a primarily large number of orange cards.
Okay, fine.
It misses that second requirement. It is kind of sad to note, though, that both of the yellow decks that we talked about were last relevant in Canterlot Knights.
Yes.
Since then, not much has come out of yellow.
Dragon
But okay.
Express. What's that?
Now we've talked about Dragon Express. That's two colors and a joke for every color, or 2 decks for every color. So we're done.
And 2 references to Dragon Express.
Yeah.
So we're done, right?
Are we done?
Yep, surprise. I'm actually a
Please?
changeling. Specifically, I'm the single colorless deck that we're going to touch on here. This, of course, needs no introduction. It's Tantabuse. The mode of operation of this is, of course, it flips a Tantabus every single time at the start of your opponent's turn, perpetually locking them out of having any action tokens. Weren't we just talking about Fluttershy Guidance Counselor?
But worse.
But worse.
Something.
This is fairly well known, so I don't think we should spend a whole lot of time on this.
It was a lot of colors, though.
It was a lot of colors.
Blue, white,
Horrible.
purple, orange. Yeah.
And a pink problem.
Only really missing yellow because it didn't need that.
Something, my little Gilda.
There is no kindness in this deck.
There is none.
None
Correct.
at all.
It is dead and gone, a thing of the past.
But yes, so I think this has the honor of being the deck with the shortest meta presence on our list.
What, 2
Yes.
weeks?
Not even that.
One event.
One event.
Well, okay, Dragon Express wasn't on our list, but it had 0 events.
Yes. But yeah, this showed up. I guess Bene Vidi Vici describes
Yeah.
this deck.
Yeah.
Yes,
It saw, it conquered, it got banned.
basically. I mean, the only thing that would even attempt to claim that title from this is one purpose. But yeah, this did not stick around long. It really
Nope.
did.
It had some impact.
A little bit. Okay,
And
let's see.
and of course, since this is the only colorless main, we don't have another colorless deck. But there is, of course, the Smooths.
The Smooths transcends time.
Honorable mention for pour some
For
out
colorless.
pour some out for one's resources.
For
Nothing.
everybody in the room's resources?
Everyone in the room's resources.
Yeah.
Nothing can stop the smooze.
That's such a fantastic chaos rule where you just kind of look at your main and just stand up and take a casual stroll around the room and say, that one, that one,
Nope.
that one.
We're using the rule from the equivalent magic card, which is you need to be able to see the thing from your seat. That doesn't mean that you can't like stand up on your chair and look around, but
I mean, you can probably also sit there and be like, hey everyone, hold up your resources.
zap, zap, zap.
Why would they do this?
Because
They'll
they'll
only do it once. But you can get them the first time. Pew, pew.
No, they'll do it twice. The problem is the second time they'll grab their opponent's resource and hold it up.
Ah, but only if they ask their opponent first. Hey, can I see that? Anyway.
Hey, can that guy over there see that card?
You're evil.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how far some decks have come, or some colors have come, and how far some have fallen. But it is cool to see that each color has had its time in the limelight.
Some more than others.
Well,
Yeah.
Except for mauve, but it really never had its time in the limelight because mauve is no longer a permitted color.
Yeah. Well,
Mauve farming?
Mauve farming. Well, that'll about wrap up our discussion on this topic for today. We would, of course, like to give a big shout out to all of our patrons on Patreon. Thank you so much for your regular support. And if you aren't currently a patron and you enjoy what we do, please consider donating. Doing so will get you some awesome rewards like the ability to vote on polls to determine what future videos we produce, a chance to share your own deck creations to be reviewed live, and even the ability to challenge members of Sim or other patrons to feature duels. If you have comments or questions you'd like to send our way, or if you're just interested in hearing about what we're working on for the future, there are many ways you can stay in contact. We have our Patreon, as mentioned previously, but we also have a Facebook page at facebook.com/commentaryismagic. We're on Twitter at CIM_CCG. You can email us at commentaryismagicteam@gmail.com. And patrons at or above the $5 per month level get access to our Slack channel where you can chat live with us any day, anytime. I think I was up till 4 yesterday, is that right?
Something around
Too
there.
late.
Yeah. And I have no business being up that late. It just happens.
Well, you had business being up that late, which is what happens when you take naps at weird times.
Yeah. If you are looking to watch any of our previous videos, including tournament recordings, you can find them on our YouTube channel, which is linked in the sidebar. And please make sure to subscribe so we can actually have a channel URL that makes some amount of sense. But with all that said, thank you to each and every one of our viewers, both here now and watching this recording later. We are Commentary is Magic, and I am, as always, Grandpaws.
I'm Emperor Bugle.
Big Cheese.
I'm all of the above. +3 resource removal is mandatory. And my name is...
And we will see you all next week.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.